The first fire Sand Creek Lookout called in was 6 miles from my tower. The second was 5. I checked his bearing against my own firefinder twice before I keyed the radio, and dispatch came back after a long pause to say there was no Sand Creek Lookout in this district. There never had been. I sat with my thumb off the transmit key and looked east to where the smoke stood thin and gray above Wolverine Basin, exactly where the voice said it would be. A real smoke. A real bearing. From a tower that did not exist. I had come back to Dutch Ridge that summer because my wife was 4 years gone and the house had grown loud with quiet. 31 seasons I watched for the Forest Service before I retired, and when the district called needing a relief lookout, I said yes before the ranger finished asking. The cab was the same as I remembered it. The Osborne Firefinder still sat dead center on its pedestal, the brass azimuth ring worn pale where 40 years of thumbs had turned it. The work is simple to describe. You watch. You learn every ridge and drainage until you can walk them with your eyes closed. When smoke rises, you sight it through the firefinder, read the bearing in degrees, judge the distance, and call it down. Another lookout crosses your line from his own tower, and where the two bearings meet, that is your fire. That is the whole business of it. 2 towers, 2 lines, 1 truth. And by my third night on the mountain, the second line was coming from a tower nobody could find. Dispatch logged my smoke in Wolverine Basin anyway, and sent a crew up at first light. They found a lightning-struck snag still smoldering, right where the 2 bearings crossed. The voice from Sand Creek had been correct to within 100 feet. That bothered me more than anything else. Wrong is easy to dismiss. Correct is not. He called again the next evening, in that last gray hour, when the light goes flat and the birds quit all at once. The voice was a man's, older than mine, level and unhurried. He gave his report the way we gave them in the old days. Azimuth first, then distance, then the drainage by name. Except he used names that were not on my map anymore. Names that had burned off it. Behind his voice, there was a sound I took at first for static. It was not static. Static does not swell and settle the way this did. It crackled, soft and steady, like a stove with the damper open. Like something patient, feeding in the dark. His new smoke was 4 miles out. I found it in the glasses inside of a minute. Thin, pale, perfectly straight in the evening calm. When I plotted his bearing against mine, the lines crossed in the Deadman Creek drainage, and I noticed something I did not say out loud to dispatch. 6 miles the first night. 5 the second. 4 now. Each fire was walking toward me, 1 mile at a time. The crew that hiked into Deadman Creek found another snag, burned out and cold, but the fire officer flagged something in his report, and the dispatcher read it to me over the radio in a careful voice. There had been no lightning in the district for 9 days, and the snag had burned from the inside out, hollowed like a chimney, with the bark left whole around it. I drove down to the district office on my day off and asked the oldest person there about Sand Creek. She was a retired dispatcher who still came in to help with the archives, and when I said the name, she stopped sorting folders and did not start again for a while. She told me Sand Creek Lookout had stood on the east rim of Wolverine Basin until August of 1962. A fire crowned out of the basin on a windy afternoon and ran up the ridge faster than any man could. The watchman stayed at his post. He kept calling bearings on the fire as it came, kept reading azimuths while the timber around his tower went up, and the last thing the district ever heard from him was a distance. He said the fire was at 0 miles. Then the carrier went dead. They never rebuilt the tower. They never found enough of him to bury. I checked the map when I got back to my cab. The first smoke the voice had reported, that snag in Wolverine Basin, stood on the old Sand Creek site. His first fire had been his own ground. He had started where he died. And every night since, he had moved. I want to say I quit right then. I did not. You tell yourself the daylight explanations, and in a lookout tower you have all day to tell them. A prankster with a radio. A skip signal from another forest. Some retired watchman gone strange in the hills. I held those explanations up, one at a time, and one at a time, the evenings took them away from me. Because the calls kept coming, always in that same flat gray hour. 3 miles, in the Corral Springs drainage. Then 2, on the shoulder of my own mountain. The crews found the same thing every time. A hollowed snag. A perfect circle of scorched ground around it. No lightning, no cause, no spread. By the 2-mile night I could hear it after dark. Not see it, hear it. A crackling down in the black timber below my tower, patient and unhurried, in a forest that showed no glow at all. I stood on the catwalk with the glasses and swept the slope until my arms ached, and there was nothing. Just the sound, and the smell of wood smoke seeping into the cab through windows I'd latched shut. The birds had stopped coming to the ridge by then. Even the chipmunks that raided my step every morning were gone. The mountain had gone quiet, the way a room goes quiet when someone walks in that nobody wants to look at. On the 7th evening, the radio opened at the same minute as always, and the old voice gave its azimuth, calm as a man reading scripture. I put my eye to the firefinder and turned the ring to his bearing the way I had every night. The sight line ran through my own reflection in the cab glass. I stood there bent to the instrument for a long moment, listening to my own breathing. Then the voice gave the distance, and the distance was 0. He named the location the old way, by legal description, township, and range and section, and I did not have to look it up. It was the ground my tower stood on. He was reporting me gay. I made myself plot it anyway. Hands not quite steady, I marked all 7 points on the map, first night to last. They made a straight line. Not a scatter, not a drift, a line drawn a mile at a stride across 4 drainages, ending at the little penciled square labeled Dutch Ridge. Then the crackling started. Close. Below me. I went out onto the catwalk. The night was windless, the moon just clearing the ridge, and down in the meadow at the foot of my stairs stood a column of smoke, straight as a wire. 60 feet from the bottom step, rising out of grass that showed no ember and no glow, in air too still to lift anything at all. It was Standing Eye. I need to say that plainly, because I have never been able to make anyone understand it. Smoke moves. Smoke wanders and thins and goes ragged at the edges. This did not. It held a shape the way a man holds a shape, narrow at the base and wider above, with something at the top that sat the way shoulders sit. The crackling did not come from the ground under it. It came from inside it. The radio spoke behind me through the open door. The old voice, patient, correct, reading my tower's name and a bearing of 0 degrees at 0 miles, the way a man closes out the last entry in a log. Then the bottom step of my stairway creaked. 1 step. A pause long enough for a slow man to lift his boot. Then the next. I did not look over the rail to see what was climbing. I have thought about that every night since, and I still believe looking would have been the end of me. I went inside, dropped the trapdoor, and threw the bolt. Then I sat on the floor with my back against the firefinder pedestal. While the steps came up, all 14 flights, unhurried, creaking in order, and the smell of a campfire filled the cab. At the top, at the trapdoor, everything stopped. The steps, the crackle. The radio carrier cut out mid-breath. The silence lasted until dawn, and I sat inside it the whole way through, listening to a faint, dry ticking against the underside of the trapdoor. Like heat working on wood. Like something cooling. Or warming up. When the sun cleared the ridge, I lifted the door and found the platform empty. But at the foot of my stairs, the meadow grass was scorched in a ring the size of a man's stride. And inside that ring, in the middle of July, the morning frost had not melted. I packed and walked down and never went back up. The district listed Dutch Ridge as unstaffed the rest of that season. If anyone else heard Sand Creek on the radio after me, it never reached the logs, and I have made a point of not asking. I live in town now, in the flats, far from the timber. 3 weeks ago, a grass fire started out by the county line, 7 miles from my house. Nobody ever found a cause. Last week, a hay shed burned in the night, and I did not need the newspaper to tell me, but I measured it on the county map anyway. 6 miles. Tonight, from my porch, I can see smoke on the low ridge behind the fairgrounds. The evening is dead calm. The column is straight as fire, and it is 5 miles out. And it is not drifting.